to the 5th episode of my podcast, I Do What I Want. I am Hollis Jo MacAllow, author. That's just my full name. Everybody calls me by my first name, naturally. And this is my podcast. I have been trying to get this going, and I've been working on getting some more guests in here, but I have people who are willing to be guests but having scheduling issues with the recording. So, hey, here's hoping we'll have someone soon. In the meantime, I hope that you will enjoy this episode. We're going back to the To Save a World book that I wrote and published back in 2017, and that is, currently in the middle of drafting the sequel and getting that ready for hopefully publication in 2023, like early-ish. But this time around, let's talk about a character study for Darian MacAllow, who is the second main character that you meet. Back episode, I want to say 3 of my podcast, I did a character study for the first main character that you meet, Ethne Alfrey, which I'm using their full names in the book. I think you only hear their full names like twice. So we already talked about Ethne. Now let's talk about Darian. And who is Darian? He is, checking. I have notes. I have lots of notes to keep myself on track with the talking points. You're welcome. So, who is Darian? Darian is the captain of the guard for the Irani tribe. The Irani are the tribe of elves that both Ethne and Darian belong to in my book. And they are tribal elves, also in the world of Rashan that I created and is on this handy-dandy map right behind me. I moved the angle of my chair so you could see the map. It's exciting. Those of you who are listening and can't see, there's a map behind me. It's fun. Anyway, so they are tribal elves, which are loosely based on the ancient Picts or Celtic peoples of the British Isles. I imagine Darian and Ethne with Scottish accents, and everyone from their tribe would be like that. And that's just for me. There are also city elves in the world of Rashan who are also elves, live, have the same physical kind of features and all of that. They're just culturally different from the tribal elves. They are, city folk. And then, of course, humans, and as I already discussed in previous episode, demons are just another humanoid race. They're not evil or anything in the world of Rashan. They're just another race, and they have a wide variety and all of that, but we'll get more into that when we talk about the character Jocelyn, but who is a demon, or perhaps a half-demon. But Darian, in the book, he and Ethne are not just from the same tribe, they're from the same village. Technically, you would say they grew up together, though they weren't really close. Like, they were always aware of each other, but not necessarily friends. They didn't really play together as little kids or anything. They just aware that the other one has always existed. He, for those of you who have not read the book, elves are taller than the average human. So Darian is about 6'4", 6'5"-ish, which would be on the tall side of average for an elf in my world. Like, elves male height averages at around 6 feet, maybe 6'2", and the females would average around 5'9", 5'10". So they're tall. But he is a little tall, so he's around 6'4"-ish. He's got long black hair and very like very sharp. I call them steely blue eyes. They're grayish blue, and he's a very serious person. He's young, but he's already earned the position of captain of the guard for his village. So he's basically in charge of the military force for their village, and he's young to have done this. As I think I mentioned already, elves live about 800 years. I had to double check my facts on that. And I may have made a mistake in my episode where I talked about ethne and said it was 400. 400 is about the lifespan of the dock fens that I talk about in my other books that have nothing to do with Rashan in this world. But elves in the world of Rashan average around an 800-year lifespan. And Darian is 130-ish, 135, which makes him roughly, equivalent of a 25-year-old man. Maybe mid to late 20s. So he's very young to have earned already such a high position. He comes from military lineage. Even his mother, and I think I may mention this briefly in the book, but even his mother was a nurse for at the military hospital, if you will. Like she basically tended to soldiers and that sort of thing. So military family the whole way, and he is definitely of that mind. He is everything that you would think of as a stereotypical military man, in the fact that he's very noble, he's very true, he's a rule follower, and he follows and directs. He follows orders really well, but since he's in the position of authority, he gives the orders. He's very clear, he's very sharp. And Darian himself is a very honorable and true man. All the positive stereotypes about a military person, that is his character, and I did that on purpose. So the negative side about that, of course, is that because he is so regimented in everything that he does, it makes him more rigid than some other people would be. He of the mindset that, okay, if you have to follow the rules, you have to follow the regiment, otherwise bad things could happen. So he thinks about things in those terms, and he says, okay, everyone needs to do their part and fall in line, otherwise something bad could happen. And if something bad happens, if everyone's doing their job, then you can fight it more effectively. And that's how his mind works. He always has good intentions, but of course, as we know, this mindset works very well in a lot of circumstances, but you can't control everything. And he's maybe even a little bit of a control freak. Little bit, but he's also a very good-hearted person, and he genuinely cares. He's extremely altruistic, and that's something in the book, in the first book, without giving away any spoilers. Basically, everybody is, the world is in turmoil. You learn this really right away that in the first book, To Save a World, the world is in cataclysm. The gods have all died, and everyone's in trouble. The planet's dying. And Darian's main motivation at the beginning of the book is he's trying to find a way to help his people, because he realizes that something is wrong. Everyone knows that something is wrong. Everyone knows. But other people are just trying to survive. He is trying to fix it. And he is trying to find a way to make everyone's lives better and trying. He's a solution-driven person, and that's his big motivation at the beginning of the book and throughout the book, but how he interprets the solution changes quite a bit as he learns more things about how he may or may not be able to help. Sorry, taking a sip of my tea for those of you who heard me swallow but aren't watching the video. So, yeah, that's really it. I mean, I based him a lot on a lot of positive characteristics that I would see in my father and my brother. And my father is a retired Navy officer. And he's a very true, noble, honorable man as well. And my brother is too. My brother was never in the military, but that personality. And a lot of the time when I was writing Darian, I would think, okay, how would my father respond to this situation? And then I would write that. I wouldn't think about me, because I'm not, I would think about, all right, what man in my life that exhibits these qualities, what would they do, not what would I do? And that's sort of how I wrote him, and I got his character going. So thanks, Dad. Thanks, Ross. Ross is my brother, for those of you who don't know. And yeah, that helped a lot. I would have used my husband for reference, but at the time that I was writing To Save a World, I actually hadn't met my husband yet, but my husband is also a veteran, so he would have also been an excellent point of reference, but he wasn't for the first book, because I didn't know him yet. But I do now. Hooray. So, and again, sorry, checking my notes. So as you know, Darian, this was a Dungeons and Dragons game. It was a role-playing game from years ago. You all know this if you've listened to any episode of this podcast. And some of the differences between Darian in the book, as I wrote him, and Darian in the game, as he was originally played, they're kind of fun. In the book, as I mentioned, he's stalwart, he's rigid, he's very serious, super stoic, just very plot-driven. He's on it, he's got a mission, he's orientated on it, tunnel vision kind of man. And he'll get the job done. He will. In the game, however, we were playing him slightly less that way. In writing a book and playing a role-playing game with other people as input, or giving input, are two very different things. When you're playing, you number one, you have another person giving you input and helping you drive the plot, and that almost gives you a little more license to goof off. It does. It gives you more license to goof off, because you're also not doing anything. You're doing it all for fun, right? It's a game. That's the whole point. And so in the game, Darian was not quite, he was still a military man, but he wasn't as serious. He was more playful. He went off book. He didn't follow all the rules all the time like he does in the book. And when he didn't follow the rules in the game, he didn't really mind that much. It just sort of happened, and here we go, moving along. In the book, I used him as a character to actually help keep me focused as a writer, and that's something I'm sure a lot of other writers do. You have certain characters that help keep you on track, and when you're the only person writing the book, you you have to create controls in a way, whether you do it consciously or not, but you have to have somebody making sure you don't go down a bunch of rabbit holes and go off script all the time. When you're doing a role-playing game, you can go down these crazy tangents and have a silly time and come back to the plot later. But if you do that in a book, your readers, if you even publish, will hate you. Because they're like, why did we even do that? Why are you talking about this? I thought you can't do that in the book. So when I was writing Darian, I actually used him as a character to help keep me on track. And so I made him much more serious and much more mission-oriented. And frankly, it made him more upset when rules weren't followed in the book, because if the other characters were stepping out of line in his perception, then it was trouble. You know, he was like, no, we're on a mission, we have a quest, and he was the one that kind of kept people in line. He's the unofficial leader of the group of main characters. You know, none of them ever declare themselves to be leader or anything like that, but the other characters are not followers, but they aren't those natural step into positions of authority sort of people. They're all, frankly, you know, very like, whoa, I don't want that responsibility. Darian's the one who steps up, says, we need to go here now. He's the adult. He's the one that keeps everyone on track. And as a writer, a very valuable character, because he keeps the story moving forward and keeps, you know, the other characters in line, which any writer will tell you. Characters, you can design and craft everything so perfectly and have everything just so, and then you start writing and your characters run off like feral children in the night, and you don't even know why, because it's your imagination, but apparently they still have minds of their own. So you need these characters to keep you going, and I use Darian that way. This also meant that Darian is, I ask people who their favorite character is a lot. I'm curious. When friends and other people contact me and said they've enjoyed the book, I always want to know who they relate to most strongly. And Darian, of them, he's the one people say the least. He is. And it's probably, and it is because I made him the most responsible, I think. You know, he's the one who has it together for the most part. And that's not highly relatable. Not always. I've had a few people tell me, oh, I like Darian. But those people who liked Darian best tended to be older. They tended to be of retirement age or older, and people who already had it together, so they could relate more strongly to his energy than the other characters who were still figuring it out along the way, and were a little more volatile, if you will. It's just something that I noticed, and I didn't realize it until I was asking people who their favorite character was, and I realized, oh, nobody says Darian. You know, I like Darian, and then I thought, it's because he's the adult. He's the one that says, stop that, kids. Let's, you know, well, not kids, but like, stop that, move on. We have to go. He cracks the whip. And that is not always the most relatable person, but he is a very necessary person. And he's a really good guy. He's a really good guy. Nobody hates Darian. Everybody likes him, but he's not a favorite. Except for those people, again, the people who love him, who say he's my favorite, almost exclusively over the age of 50. And I love that they love him, but these are people who have raised children, taken the leadership roles already, personally or professionally, and they can relate to him. They understand that. But Darian still, even though he's the one that drives plots and keeps everyone on task in the book, he still has his own evolution in, of course, all of them have their own evolution. He has a learning process. And one of the things that I really like is that Darian, he has, well, we're all born, or not born with, but we all, growing up, consciously or not, have certain thoughts or predeterminations about people outside of our own little bubble of family that, you know, we think, oh, this is like this, that is like that. And Darian has a lot of that. He's worldly in the sense that he's traveled and he's gone out on missions, but what really opens up for Darian is, in the beginning of the book, he is still very, very cloistered into his own cultural mindset, if you will, which isn't a terrible thing, but he knows not the entire world doesn't operate like that. He gets it. He doesn't think that other people are wrong for not operating like that. But on that subconscious level, he just thinks, this is the best way because this is how I was raised. And that makes sense. We all have felt that way or feel that way, consciously or not, and it's not necessarily negative, but it is a bubble. It is a bubble, and, you know, not everybody wants it to be popped. And Darian is happy in his little cultural mindset bubble, but throughout the journey of the book, you know, obviously they leave the village right away, like in the first 3 chapters, gone. And the rest of the book is taking place out in the world, and they're going all over the place. And he has to learn how to adjust, because he's been outside of his village a lot, but he's never had to live outside of the village before. Always before, it was a mission, gone for a couple weeks, come back, or even less than that. So, but there's a big difference between going on a vacation somewhere for a week, to put it in a modern day terminology, and going to live somewhere completely different for several months or the rest of your life. It's a shift. When you just go to visit a different place, you enjoy it, you whatever, but you don't actually adjust your own behaviors. You might do it temporarily, but in your head, you don't adjust your thinking or anything. You just, if something's different than the way you do it, okay, you say, well, this is how they do it here, but I'm not changing how I do it because I don't have to. And, but when you actually go to live in another place, which I personally have experienced, where, you know, I did 3 I did 3 study abroads, and I when I was at university, and I lived in the Czech Republic for a while, and I've been places, and yeah, there's a big difference between going to live somewhere and visiting, and making that more permanent shift and having to adjust how you see things. It's a different kind of way. And that's what Darian has to do, because he was in this small village, tribal mindset. And it wasn't wrong. But he was no longer there. And that mindset doesn't work in the rest of the world. So he had to learn how to adjust his thinking, become more open to how the other people in the world existed. And frankly, he did become a fuller person in a lot of ways. And he things that he was maybe a little prejudiced against at the beginning of the book, like he was a goody two-shoes. He is a goody two-shoes. He's that guy that men and women shouldn't sleep in the same rooms, and like this is not decent, and that kind of thing. Yeah, that guy. Not that he would get angry with anyone about it, but yeah, he was the goody two-shoes. And some of the other characters just shrugged at him and said, doesn't matter. What are you doing? We're not in the village. And Ethne, who comes from the same culture that Darian does, but she was much more, she wanted to cast it out because she was already a rebel. Excuse me. She was already a rebel in the book. If you listen to episode 3, then she was ready. Her mindset was already outside of that cultural bubble that was the village before she even left. Darian was not there. But in the book, at one point, when he's saying, "Oh, I don't think this is decent, I don't think this is right," Ethne just looks at him and says, "We're not in the village anymore, Darian." And, implying, get over it. We're out here in the world, and you need to adjust. And those are several wake-up calls. Some of the things that you might love about Darian, to get back to my notes and get back on track, some of the things you might love about him is he is very noble. He's a very good-hearted person. He is highly protective of people that he cares about, even people he doesn't know. If he perceives you as someone who is in need, he'll help you. And he will do so to the best of his abilities. He is a very, very good guy. You want him around. He takes care of it. He solves problems, and he cares. And we love that. And the things that you might not like about Darian is also what we've mentioned. Stickler for the rules. Can be a little close-minded, though he's willing to listen. He's passive-aggressive. Like, Ethne's more of the fight-with-you personality, and he's the stoic type. He's very even-tempered, very, very, he can be downright icy. If he's angry, he doesn't get loud, he doesn't shout, but he will be cold. And that's something that isn't, it's maybe a little scarier, but with Darian and Ethne as a pairing, you almost, when emotions run high, you have sort of a fire and ice situation, which works well for them in the long run, because she'll get all feisty and he'll be upset, but he's very cool, and it kind of deflates the situation a little bit. They might not talk for a few hours, but at least it doesn't get out of hand. And later on in the book, as he grows, he becomes less rigid. He relaxes. You get to see more of the fun side. He does actually make some jokes. He appreciates it, and it's nice to see him grow. We will see Darian in the sequel to Save a World, which I have entitled The Queen Witch. And again, as I mentioned earlier in the episode, hoping to have that published in early 2023. Typing it up now. The book is fully written. I'm doing editing and that nonsense now. So hopefully if I can get it together. So we'll see that, but we'll see him continue to evolve in the sequel as well. As I mentioned in Ethne's episode, there is a daughter, Darian. You get to see him as a father, and again, their daughter literally has the very first line in the entire book. So you know she exists from the first sentence. So I'm not counting that as a spoiler. But you do get to see him softer. In the first Save a World, he would fix, when he was feeling very serious about something, whether it be with his friends or a perceived enemy, he would fix them with this really cold, icy stare. I would call it his steely gaze. It's like cold steel, just rawr at you. And it was, those. I think about the Betty Davis eyes. That is an old reference that I know not everyone is going to get, but it's that, it's that look that people give you, the, like, I'm going to kill you look. You just, you feel ice water in your veins. You go, oh God. And Darian has that, and he uses it a lot in the first book because he's more stoic. But in the second book, in the sequel, now he's a father, and he's softened quite a bit. And he still is a military man. He still has a lot of that in him. That's a big part of his personality. But he cares less about the actual rules and more about protecting what he loves. So he still likes regiment. He's still super mission focused and solution focused. But he doesn't care as much at all about rules, so to speak, the written guidelines of society, if you will. He doesn't care so much about that. He cares about making sure that he is doing his best to provide for and care for his family and anyone that he cares about, which is great. And that steely gaze does not have really, it has a few appearances, just a few, not many though. There were dozens of appearances of that gaze in the first book, but in the second book, small handful. I can only think of one instance in the second book off the top of my head. But that's Darian MacAllow in a nutshell, I guess. I hope that you've enjoyed learning a little bit more about him. Another character study episode will be coming up in a couple of episodes where I talk about Aram, the other guy, one of the other male main characters. I'm basically doing these character study episodes in the order of appearance in the book. So first person you meet is Ethne, second person you meet is Darian, third main character you meet is Aram. So we'll talk about Aram, and then Yoselin is the fourth main character. So yeah, little little bit of fun there. I hope you've enjoyed learning more about him, and maybe you'll like him a little bit better when you read it because you understand his purpose, and that if it weren't for Darian's character, I would have completely fallen off the tracks and lost the plot. So be grateful. Be grateful for the goody two-shoes. We need them. That's it. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate it very much. Once again, I'll be doing these. It's 2 episodes a month, every other Sunday. So the next episode, I'm going to look at my calendar now because I haven't checked. But yeah, so the next episode will actually be July 3rd. Yes, next episode will be, I'll be posting it on July 3rd. I'm not sure what I'll be talking about yet. I'm hoping I will have a guest, and perhaps, honestly, been chatting with a friend, and they were suggesting that I talk a little bit more about the hurdles of being a writer in the real world, and not so much, so maybe I'll have another fellow writer on with me if I can get the schedule sussed out, and talk a little bit about pitfalls and things like that when you're publishing as a first-time writer that I fell into and I know a lot of other writers do, and the ones that I managed to avoid through some good advice and research. But we'll see about that. I hope to have you listening on July 3rd. As always, I would love it if you want to talk to me. You can do comments on the video. You can email me from my website, hollisjoemccullumauthor.com. DM me on Instagram. My Instagram is at hollisjoemccullum. All of that jazz. So yeah, I'm around. Let me know. I would love to hear your feedback, and if you want me to talk about anything in particular, please tell me. I'd love help with content. Okay, I'm gonna play the music again.